Morning, Mr. Arlinghouse. Today is Wednesday, the last free Wednesday of this year. Now on, we'll be meeting on Wednesdays, but for our class, it doesn't make any sense. Yes, thank you, Mr. Arlinghouse. I do have a nice new coiffure. Now I look like Lex Luthor. So let's get to the matter at hand, shall we? Let's talk about political movements of the 1920s. Let's talk about fascism. Yes, fascism. As it says there, in Italy, Benito Mussolini brought fascism. Look what I'm doing here, Mr. Arlinghouse. I'm creating a. I'm going to pause now.
Excuse the interruption. At this time, FBLA, Gaming Club, FFA, Raider Alliance, and interns, please report to the large gym. Thank you.
It's going to be happening all day, Mr. Arlinghouse. Democracy. Um, no. Okay. Yes, that's good. Yeah. And back. Excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm making a. Good. Yes, Mr. Arlinghouse, I like that. Look what I just did. I created a chart, and basically it helps us understand the. Did I misspell that, Mr. Arlinghouse? There it is. Yeah. Um, Good. It helps us understand the political spectrum from left. You see on the left page of extreme liberal. See, communism is an extremely liberal form of government in its purest form, and so extreme that it's radical. The idea that there is absolutely no private ownership, that the state owns everything. And on the all total end of the other spectrum, you have fascism, Nazism, totally reactionary, that there is private ownership, but it is the government that is the absolute rule. Well, let's get into it. So, in Italy, Benito Mussolini brought fascism. Most scholars agree that the term fascist means anti-democratic, anti-parliamentary, anti-Marxist. Did I say anti-parliamentary again? And frequently anti-Semitic. And so, uh, yes, all those things. Extremely nationalistic. Yeah, it's very good. So, They, the fascists, sought to make the world safe for the middle class, small business owners, and moderate amounts of property and small farmers. Fascist regimes rejected the idea of the French Revolution and of 19th century classical liberalism. They believed that parliaments sacrificed national goals to petty differences within the government. And there's a point there. I mean, I watch our government operate all the time, and I swear I do believe that one of the political parties could come up with the idea that, that eating food will keep you alive, and the other party would take the exact opposite stance on it, just because they're of the opposing party. I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible of how in political parties it's just about making sure your party is on top, and that's what they're saying here. They sacrifice national goals to petty differences within the government. Fascist governments were usually single party dictatorships characterized by terrorism and police tactics. Yes. They were rooted in the base of mass political parties. Mussolini brought his own brand to fascism. He had been the son of a blacksmith, teacher, a day laborer before entering politics. But let me tell you what kind of guy Mussolini was, Mr. Arlinghouse. He reminds me of you when you were a kid. Mussolini, as an 8-year-old, get this, Mr. Arlinghouse, as an 8-year-old, he got thrown out of school. Now you say, what does an 8-year-old to do to get thrown out of school? He kept stabbing his classmates with a knife. I mean, and so yeah. But look, I mean, the man was a teacher. That's even more frightening. But yes, he became the editor of a newspaper called Avanti. In 1914, he broke with the socialists and promoted Italy's interest into Italy's entry. In World War I with the Allies. He lost his job with the newspaper Avanti, but soon formed his own newspaper, Il Popolo, the Italia, the people of Italy. He would change his ideas, but his one real goal was political survival, which is what you often find amongst extremist leaders like this. Their eventual goal is to survive and stay on top politically. After the war, World War One, Italy was a mess. Parliament had ceased to function. In other words, they were in gridlock all the time. Ministers of each of the national departments, Department of Defense, Department of the Interior, ruled by decree. Many in Italy felt that Italy got cheated by the Treaty of Versailles. They had not received, this is a town, Fiume, on the northeast corner of the Adriatic Sea. And like a lot of people, they felt that they got cheated by. Italy expected that after the war, it would have the beginnings of this Italia Irredenta, this Italian empire that would be similar to the old Roman Empire. Gabriel Annunzio led the opposition voice in Italy. He was eventually driven out, but he had embarrassed the government. Strikes occurred, workers occupied factories, peasants seized land. The socialists captured the plurality of the parliament, and parliament became deadlocked. Many believe that communist revolution was the way out of this dilemma. Let me write one more thing here, Mr. Arlinghouse. I'll get rid of that. Yeah, the trains did not run on time. We'll get back to that point in a moment. So, Mussolini changed sides again and soon supported the upper and middle class nationalists. He opposed socialists. I mean, you see, look at my chart again. Fascism, Nazism, socialism, opposite ends of the spectrum. This becomes increasingly important during World War II because these guys believe that these guys are the worst things on planet Earth, and vice versa. Yeah, all right, back to the matter at hand. He resorted to bullying thug tactics to enforce his will. I mean, that means beating people up. You do know that. Conservative factory owners and the like were grateful for it, and it were crimes. He was beating the people up, beating the opposition up. Radicals, socialists, people who protested what was going on. And the police ignored what Mussolini was doing. In 1921, an election year, Mussolini and 34 of his cronies were sent to the Chamber of Deputies, the parliament. The movement had hundreds of thousands of supporters, calling themselves, this is a test question, Mr. Allinghouse, the Black Shirts. I told you that term was coming back. There were the red shirts. In Germany, there will be the brown shirts. These are the black shirts. Calling themselves the Black Shirts, in March of 1922, they began a march on Rome, the so-called Black Shirt March. King Victor Emmanuel III refused to order the army out, and the monarch asked Mussolini to become his prime minister. And so Mussolini thugged his way into power. The march was famous, but it only worked because Mussolini had made political friends first. Mussolini came to power much by thuggery, but his detractors figured that he wouldn't really last long, and they were wrong. One of the things that Mussolini, and this is going to come up on your test, that Mussolini and Adolf Hitler and Franklin Delano Roosevelt and many of the great leaders, and Winston Churchill, many of the great leaders of this era had one tool, one advantage, one new weapon that they had, and that was oration. Because the invention of radio, leaders could go before the entire population and speak. And judging, depending on what kind of a speaker you were. I mean, to be honest, Adolf Hitler was a great speaker, at least in the fact that he could get people charged up. In fact, Mussolini was too. Winston Churchill he was a master of the English language, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt with his fireside chats. So the point of the matter is, at first people thought Mussolini was some kind of clown and he wasn't going to hang around long, but they were quite wrong. Anyway, Mussolini became successful because of the weakness of his rivals. On November the 23rd, 1922, Mussolini was granted dictatorial power in Italy for 1 year. By 1924, the fascists had won complete control of the Chamber of Deputies through hook or crook, thuggery, or voting. The attractive thing about fascism and totalitarian regimes versus democracy is that fascist regimes can promise and do something now. I mean, the weakness of democracy, as we see, is that democracy is like a giant committee, and I mean a giant committee. For example, the Congress of the United States is a committee made up of 535 people. Now, how are you ever going to get 535 people to agree on anything? Answer, you can't do it. You can't get 3 people to agree on where to go to lunch. And so that's the power that fascism has. They can make decisions and make changes now. And that's attractive to people who want to see change. And that was attractive to the peoples of the 1920s and 30s when there were issues. All right, so by 1924, the fascist laws passed in 1925 and 1926 allowed Mussolini to rule by decree. You say, what does that mean? It means basically Mussolini could say, I want to do this, and it was done. Mussolini had transformed Italy into a single-party dictatorship. Mussolini's fascists resorted to terror. Like I said, murdering Giacomo Matteotti, a leading nonconformist socialist leader. And people just looked the other way. As the opposition left the Chamber of Deputies, ran off, Mussolini had an even freer hand. For every government organization, there was a parallel organization within the Fascist Party. In other words, in this new government established by Mussolini, for every government organization, there was a Fascist Party, a black shirt party organization that basically dictated to them what to do. Many Italians respected, even admired Mussolini because they believed he had saved the country from, there it is, I told you, from Bolshevism, from communism. His oratorical skills and general intelligence, and the fact that he was quite full of himself. I mean, he used to brag that he had mastered 1,000 women quite publicly, allowed him to hold his own in large crowds and prominent individuals. His enemies were either driven out of the country or murdered. Through the Lateran Accord of 1929, Mussolini and the Roman Catholic Church made peace. All right. Remember, Mr. Arlinghouse, that when the state of Italy was founded in 1869, that the state of Italy and the Roman Catholic Church, because the city of Rome had been forcibly taken over by the national government, the Roman Catholic Church basically acted like the state of Italy did not exist, and the state of Italy acted like the Roman Catholic Church did not exist. As it says there, since the 1860s, the Roman Catholic Church, had been hostile to the Italian state. The agreement recognized the Pope as the ruler of the Vatican City, and he also recognized the Roman Catholic Church as the official religion of Italy, exempted Roman Catholic Church property from taxation, and allowed the church to govern marriage, and gave Mussolini public responsibility because the Roman Catholic Church said, yeah, he's Mussolini. He's the leader of our country. It was like a peace agreement between the two. Clever move on the part of Mussolini. But let's talk about this. He made the trains run on time, shall we? One day I'll learn how this works. Oh, I know. There we go. That's a saying, but it's true. And if you understand this saying, you'll understand how Mussolini operated. You see, prior to Mussolini taking over, Italy was a mess. It was a disorganized mess. And so Mussolini, one of the things that made Mussolini popular was he changed many of those things. Well, how did he do it? For example, in Italy, prior to Mussolini becoming the dictator, trains in Italy were considered on time if they arrived at their destination within the same day as their scheduled time of arrival. Now, you and I know, Mr. Allinghouse, that is no way to operate any kind of transportation system. Not today, not in the 20th century. Pardon me, the 21st. That trains, couldn't get there any, faster than the same day. Well, Mussolini had a solution for that. Pardon me. The solution that he came up with quite simple. Mussolini said, all right, if a train is late, the conductor is to be taken off the train and shot. And guess what? Trains ran on time. Now, that's efficient, but really, is that the way you want to go? And so, yeah, that's Mussolini. Remember, as an 8-year-old, he stabbed his friends. So, let's change gears and talk about Great Britain. Britain and France had won the war, but did not win the peace. France had become the strongest military power on the European continent itself, Both nations, France and Britain, had lost large numbers of their finest young men. Remember again, Mr. Allinghouse, that after World War I, there were many small towns in Germany, yes, but also in France and Britain, that were totally devoid of males between the ages of 19 and 50. I mean, they were gone. They had been wiped out. Their economies were weakened because a large number of their men, the producers in factories, had, of course, been killed. A larger number was wounded and wasn't going to be working anymore. And the economies were hurt by the war. Another thing that happens after the war, there's always an economic depression because you bring the war production has slowed down, has been abandoned. And so, yeah, the economies of those countries went into a stagnation. And I'm going to sneeze, Mr. Longhouse. I hope you'll forgive me. Thank you, Mr. Longhouse. Because I know you gave me your blessing. So, French voters went completely conservative after the war. So many people felt deceived by the Treaty of Versailles. Even though the French were supposed to be benefiting from it, they didn't think that they benefited enough. George Clemenceau, the guy who had negotiated the Treaty of Versailles, was not reelected. The voters, they felt the Versailles Treaty too lenient. They wanted protection from Germany and Russian communism. Look at that again. See, I'm telling you, Mr. Arlinghouse, France kept rotating cabinets because its people were conservative and they didn't think the cabinets were doing enough to make changes. During the first 5 years, France accepted its role of European leader. They began with the organization of something called the Little Entente. The Little Entente was made up of, it was an alliance, Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Yugoslavia, along with France. The French wanted to make sure that Germany stayed weak. France then made alliances with the Little Entente and with Poland to isolate Germany. Basically, you see what France is doing? If you look at a map again, time for me to pause. Pause. We're back in the Starling House, so let's pull up this map here. Now, this is post-war Europe again. And remember the members of the Little Entente: Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Romania, and Poland. So what France has done with all these little countries here, they have surrounded Germany, which was their goal, right? So yes, we understand that. Back to the matter at hand. So, the Little Entente, however, was not reliable. Its members had joined not to oppose Germany, but to oppose Hungary. These dealings only isolated and threatened both the Germans and the Russians. While other nations were meeting at Genoa, the Germans and the Russians signed a treaty of their own at Rapallo. The Germans used this treaty as an opportunity to train their armies and tanks in place. What the Germans did, the Treaty of Rapallo allowed the Germans in secret to train soldiers in the Soviet Union. This treaty contained no secret alliances, but other nations suspected they did. In early 1923, the French declared Germany to be in default of the reparations debt. The French, with Raymond Poincaré as prime minister, ordered its troops to occupy the Ruhr. Now, once again, the Ruhr, where's your map? The Ruhr is a territory right in here, which was supposed to be demilitarized, and the French sent soldiers into the Ruhr for the purpose of taking over the large coal mines, the large factories, and then whatever those places produced got shipped directly to France for free. it was an act of war. Um, but Germany was so weak they couldn't do anything about it. So, and where are you at, Horton? Right here. So I'm going to have to pause here. Interruptions, Mr. Arlinghouse, when will they stop? But anyway, so France sent soldiers into the Ruhr and basically, began packing this stuff up and sending back to France. The German government ordered passive resistance. You say, what does that mean? The German government told all the workers in the area to go on strike, to just not do anything. Policy called for a general strike in the largest industrial district in Germany. The French, because they had invaded the Ruhr, lost face with the British and showed one of the many weaknesses of the Versailles Treaty, which was that, that there was no way to enforce it. Poincaré was defeated in the next election, and the new government, led by Edouard Herriot, recognized the Soviet Union. Hey, Soviet Union, don't I know you? Didn't I see you at the Weimar Bar Mitzvah? No. But yeah, recognize, that means that the government of France recognized the communist government of the Soviet Union to be the legitimate government, and was also more reconciliatory towards Germany. This policy was the work of Aristide Briand, whose name is on your test. He is a French foreign minister who will make a lot of treaties during this period of time that tried to promote the peace. For example, here, we're going to talk about this later, the Kellogg-Briand Pact. For the rest of the 1920s, the conservatives of France remained in power, and the inflation rate in France cooled down somewhat. And Mr. Arlinghouse, I think we're going to stop here with Roman numeral 15. Yes. And we'll begin again tomorrow.